The wolf was close enough that I could hear its breathing. Not a growl, not a snarl. Just slow, controlled air moving in and out, steady and patient, as if it had all the time in the world. I stood frozen between two trees, my pulse hammering so loudly I was certain it could hear it. The flashlight in my hand trembled, its beam cutting across the snow and then stopping. The wolf didn't charge. It didn't retreat. It only stared. That was when I realized something was deeply wrong. Predators that attack are terrifying. Predators that wait are worse. The forest had been silent long before I noticed the wolf. That was the first mistake. Thinking silence meant safety. Snow muffled sound in a way that made everything feel distant, unreal, as if the world had pulled a thick blanket over itself. My boots sank with each step, the cold biting through the soles, each breath turning sharp inside my chest. I had been walking for hours, longer than planned, chasing a trail that no longer made sense, telling myself I would turn back after the next ridge, then the next. The light was fading, bleeding out of the sky in dull gray layers, and the trees grew denser the deeper I went. It started with the feeling of being watched. Not imagined fear, not nerves, something heavier. The kind of awareness that presses against the back of your skull and refuses to leave. I stopped walking. The forest didn't respond. No birds, no wind through branches, no distant cracking of ice. Just stillness. I told myself it was nothing, adjusted the strap of my pack, and kept moving. That was the second mistake. Tracks appeared not far ahead, faint impressions in the snow, elongated and purposeful. Wolf tracks, fresh. They crossed my path at an angle and disappeared into the trees on the other side. I crouched to inspect them, fingers burning as I brushed away powdery snow. One set, large, heavy, not a pack. I remember feeling a strange relief at that, as if a single wolf was somehow manageable. I stood, scanning the tree line, trying to spot movement. Nothing. Only dark trunks rising like pillars. I should have turned back then. Every instinct whispered that I was no longer alone. But curiosity, arrogance, and the false comfort of daylight pushed me forward. I followed the slope downward, the terrain growing uneven, the forest tightening around me. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Time behaves differently when fear hasn't fully arrived yet. Then I noticed the tracks again, parallel to my own this time, always just off to the side, not crossing, not intersecting, matching my pace. I stopped abruptly. The tracks stopped too. That was when the cold truly reached me, spreading from my spine outward. Wolves don't do that by accident. I called out, my voice sounding small and wrong in the open air. The sound fell flat, swallowed by snow and trees. I waited for movement, for a shape to break from the forest. Nothing happened. I laughed once, a short, hollow sound trying to shake the tension loose. I told myself I was projecting fear onto patterns that meant nothing. I started walking again, faster now. The forest opened slightly ahead, a narrow clearing carved between slopes. I stepped into it and felt exposed immediately, like stepping onto a stage. That was when I saw the wolf for the first time. It stood at the far edge of the clearing, partially shadowed, its body angled toward me. Gray fur blended with the trees behind it, but its eyes caught what little light remained. They were fixed on me, unblinking. The distance between us wasn't great, far enough that I could pretend I was safe, close enough that I knew I wasn't. I raised my arms instinctively, trying to appear larger, recalling every fragmented survival tip I had ever heard. The wolf didn't react. No shift in posture, no lowering of the head, no baring of teeth. It simply watched. Its stillness was deliberate, almost calculated. I took a step back. The wolf took a step forward, not closing the distance, just mirroring me. That was when I understood. This wasn't a confrontation. It was a measurement. My breathing grew shallow. I forced myself not to run, knowing that sudden movement could trigger pursuit. The snow beneath my boots felt unstable, treacherous. I glanced behind me, gauging the path back, and when I looked forward again, the wolf was still there. Closer now. Not by much. Enough to notice. I backed away slowly, my muscles screaming to turn and flee. The wolf followed, silent, its paws sinking into the snow without sound. No aggression, no hesitation. Just presence. The forest seemed to bend around us, the clearing narrowing as shadows stretched longer. Darkness came quickly after that. The last traces of daylight vanished, replaced by a dim blue glow that made depth hard to judge. I reached for my flashlight with numb fingers and clicked it on. The beam cut through the gloom and landed squarely on the wolf's face. It didn't flinch. The light reflected in its eyes, pale and cold, but there was no confusion there, no fear, only attention. As if the flashlight, like me, was simply another variable to be accounted for. I lowered the beam slightly, unsure why I felt compelled to appease it. The realization settled slowly and heavily. The wolf had been guiding me, not chasing, not attacking, steering. I turned slightly to the left, testing the theory. The wolf adjusted its angle. I shifted right. It moved again, always keeping me within an invisible corridor. Panic rose, thick and suffocating. My heart pounded so hard it made my vision blur. I was no longer choosing where to go. The trees ahead thinned, revealing a downward slope. I hesitated at the edge, the ground dropping away into deeper shadow. The wolf stopped as well, standing just beyond the reach of my light. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Snow drifted lazily between us, catching the beam like falling ash. That was when a second sound reached my ears. Not footsteps, not breath. Water, faint but unmistakable. A river or something like it, moving fast beneath ice. I looked back at the wolf, my mind racing, trying to understand what it wanted from me. It held my gaze, unyielding, and then slowly, deliberately it stepped aside, opening the path forward. The opening the wolf created felt intentional, like a door held open just long enough to make refusal impossible. I didn't move at first. Every instinct screamed that stepping forward was a mistake, yet standing still felt worse. The air pressed against my ears, heavy with cold and anticipation. The sound of water below grew clearer now, a low, continuous rush that didn't belong in a place this quiet. I tightened my grip on the flashlight and took a careful step toward the slope. The ground dipped sharply, forcing me to lean back to keep my balance. Snow slid beneath my boots in thin sheets, whispering as it moved. I glanced over my shoulder. The wolf followed, never closer than before, never farther. Always there. The beam of my light caught its outline between trees, its head level with its shoulders, posture relaxed in a way that felt profoundly unsettling. This was not hunger. This was not fear. This was purpose. The descent slowed me. Each step required calculation, and with every pause, the wolf paused too. I began to understand the rhythm of it. Move, stop, wait. The forest narrowed again, branches scraping softly against my jacket, needles dusting my face with frost. The water sounded closer now, louder, echoing through the trees. I smelled it before I saw it. cold, metallic, alive. The slope leveled out near the bottom, opening into a thin corridor of ice-coated ground that ran parallel to the sound. I swept the flashlight from side to side, revealing a river cutting through the forest, partially frozen. Dark water churning beneath fractured ice. The current was strong, relentless. Crossing it would be dangerous even in daylight. At night, it felt impossible. I stopped at the edge, heart hammering, breath burning in my lungs. The wolf emerged more fully into the light now, standing several meters away. Its fur rippled slightly in the breeze rising from the water. For the first time, it shifted its weight, turning its head briefly toward the river and then back to me. The meaning was clear enough to chill me more than the cold ever could. It wanted me here. I scanned the opposite bank, searching for a reason, a trail, anything that explained this strange choreography. That was when I noticed the tracks. Not wolf tracks, human ones. Old, partially filled with snow, leading down to the river and stopping abruptly at the broken ice. Someone had come this way before me, someone who hadn't made it across. The realization settled slowly, each piece locking into place with dreadful clarity. The wolf hadn't been guiding me randomly. It had been retracing a path. My path now overlapped with another person's final moments, and the wolf had chosen to repeat them with me. A sound escaped my throat before I could stop it, a sharp, involuntary exhale that bordered on a sob. The wolf's ears twitched. It took one step closer, then another, shortening the distance just enough to remind me how fragile my situation was. I raised the flashlight again, my hands shaking violently now, and aimed it directly at its eyes. The light reflected brightly, but the wolf didn't recoil. It simply stopped, muscles coiled beneath fur, watching. I backed away from the river's edge, boots slipping on ice. The wolf mirrored me, angling its body so that my retreat curved along the bank instead of away from it. I tried to move sideways to break the invisible line it held me in, but each attempt was gently corrected. Not with speed, not with threat, just presence, a living boundary. The forest felt smaller now, as if the trees themselves leaned inward to listen. My breath fogged the air in frantic bursts, my chest tight with the effort to stay calm. Running meant falling. Falling meant noise. Noise meant pursuit. I had no illusions about winning that race. I forced myself to slow my breathing, to think. Wolves test. Wolves observe. Somewhere in this ordeal, there had to be a mistake it didn't expect me to correct. I lowered the flashlight and shifted my posture, standing taller, squaring my shoulders. I made myself look directly at it, holding its gaze longer than felt natural. The moment stretched, thin as wire. The wolf tilted its head slightly as if reassessing. Its tail remained low, relaxed. I took a single step forward, not toward the river, but toward it. The response was immediate. The wolf stiffened, muscles tightening, its body angling subtly to block my advance. It hadn't anticipated defiance. That knowledge sparked something dangerous and hopeful inside me. I took another step. The wolf bared its teeth, not in a snarl, but a warning, lips lifting just enough to reveal white. The message was clear. I stopped. The forest seemed to exhale around us. Time lost meaning after that. Minutes blurred together as we stood in that frozen standoff, neither willing to give ground. My legs trembled from the strain, sweat gathered beneath my layers, icy against my skin. The river roared beside us, uncaring, eternal. Somewhere deep in the forest, a branch cracked, a small sound, but enough to shatter the fragile equilibrium. The wolf's head snapped toward the noise. For the first time since I'd seen it, its attention broke. Just for a second, that was all I needed. I turned and moved, not running, but fast enough to matter, angling away from the river and uphill into thicker cover. Snow sprayed beneath my boots as I pushed myself forward, lungs screaming, vision tunneling. Behind me, I heard movement. Not the chaotic rush of a chase, but controlled steps, measured and steady, closing the distance with terrifying efficiency. I didn't look back. I couldn't afford to. The forest ahead was a blur of shadow and branches, each step a gamble. I knew one mistake would end this. The sound behind me grew closer, breath and footfall weaving into a single, relentless presence. I veered sharply between two trees, scraping my shoulder hard enough to steal my breath. Pain flared, grounding me, sharpening my focus. I kept moving, heart pounding so violently it felt like it might tear free. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the pursuit stopped. I skidded to a halt, spinning around, flashlight swinging wildly through the darkness. The beam cut across snow, trees, empty air. No wolf, no movement. The forest stood silent once more, as if nothing had happened at all. I waited, every muscle locked, afraid to breathe. Seconds passed, then more. The river's sound was distant now, muffled by trees. Slowly, dread crept back in, heavier than before. Because predators don't abandon a hunt without reason. And deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Silence returned too cleanly, as if the forest had rehearsed it. I stood frozen where I'd stopped, flashlight trembling in my hand, the beam carving a narrow tunnel through branches and snow. Nothing moved, no eyes reflected back. No breath fogged the air except my own. The absence felt deliberate, heavier than pursuit had been. I knew enough about predators to understand this was not relief. This was repositioning. I forced myself to move again, slower now, careful to place each step where the snow was packed. The slope climbed steadily, muscles burning as I pushed upward. Every few meters I stopped and listened, counting my breaths, straining for any sound that didn't belong to the forest itself. Wind whispered through the treetops. Somewhere far off, ice cracked. Otherwise, nothing. The trees began to thin, opening into a wider stretch of ground dotted with exposed rock. Moonlight spilled across it, pale and unforgiving. I stepped into the clearing and immediately regretted it. Out here, I was visible from every angle. I swept the light in a slow arc, heart pounding, and that was when I saw the tracks. They weren't behind me. They were ahead. Fresh impressions pressed into the snow at the far edge of the clearing, perfectly spaced, leading away into the trees. The wolf had passed through here while I was still climbing, cutting me off without a sound. The realization tightened my chest until breathing hurt. It hadn't chased me blindly. It had anticipated my direction, moved faster than I could, and waited. A low shape detached itself from the shadows where the tracks disappeared. The wolf stepped forward, unhurried, calm, its body half lit by moonlight. It didn't bare its teeth this time. It didn't growl. It simply stood there, blocking the only clear path ahead. Another shape shifted to the side, then another. Two more wolves emerged, spreading out just enough to form a loose arc. I hadn't seen them before, that was the point. The first wolf, the one that had followed me from the start, stood at the center. Its gaze locked onto mine with unsettling familiarity, as if it had been studying me this entire time, learning. The others watched too, their movements minimal, precise. This wasn't a pack rushing in for a kill. This was containment. I backed away instinctively, boots crunching softly. The wolves adjusted, mirroring me, tightening the arc without breaking formation. Panic surged hot and sharp, threatening to undo me, but I clamped down on it, forcing myself to think. Predators exploit chaos. Fear makes mistakes easier to predict. I slowed my movements, exaggerated my breathing until it steadied and kept the flashlight trained low, not directly in their eyes. The central wolf shifted its weight, ears flicking as if listening for something beyond me. I followed its gaze and felt my stomach drop. The ground behind me sloped downward again, steeper than before, disappearing into darkness. I hadn't realized how far I drifted during the climb. The wolves had guided me here too, corralling me back toward danger with quiet efficiency. Snow gave way beneath my heel as I stepped back, a small slide starting before I could correct it. I windmilled my arms, catching myself just short of losing balance, but the message was clear. There would be no careful retreat this time. One wrong step and gravity would do the rest. The wolves waited. Time stretched painfully. My legs ached from holding position, muscles trembling with the effort. Cold seeped through my gloves, numbing my fingers around the flashlight. I could feel my pulse in my throat, loud enough that I wondered if they could hear it. The central wolf took a step forward, closing the distance by less than a meter. It lowered its head slightly, not aggressive but intent. I raised my arm slowly, extending the flashlight outward, then lowered it to the ground and let it go. The beam rolled away, casting erratic shadows before settling on its side. Darkness rushed in, thicker than before. The wolves didn't react. They had never cared about the light. I lifted my hands, palms open, making myself larger, taller, forcing my body to project certainty I didn't feel. I took one deliberate step forward, then another, angling toward a narrow gap between two of the wolves. The pack responded instantly, not lunging but shifting, closing the gap with fluid precision. Teeth flashed briefly, not in threat but reminder. The ground behind me crumbled again, snow sliding in a thin cascade down the slope. I glanced back despite myself, and that moment of distraction cost me. The central wolf surged forward, not to attack but to claim space. It stopped so close I could see individual hairs along its muzzle, its breath warm against the cold air. I froze. For a heartbeat, everything balanced on that edge. Then the wolf turned its head slightly, exposing its neck, and stepped past me. One by one, the others followed, flowing around me like water around a stone. They didn't touch me, they didn't need to. Their movement forced me to turn, to follow, to keep them in sight. Ahead of us, the trees opened once more. I recognized the sound before I saw it. Water, louder now, angrier. The river again, but narrower here, funneled between rock walls that rose sharply on either side. The current roared through the gap, ice shattering and reforming in violent cycles. There was no crossing here, only a dead end. The wolves stopped at the edge of the trees, forming a line behind me. The central wolf sat back on its haunches, posture relaxed, almost patient. I stood alone on the frozen ground, river mere steps away, the roar filling my ears until it drowned out my thoughts. That was when I understood. They weren't hunting me, they were waiting for me to decide. The river's roar pressed against my skull, vibrating through bone and breath until it felt impossible to think. The cold air tasted sharp, metallic, each inhale burning deeper than the last. I stood at the edge, boots inches from fractured ice, knowing that one more step forward meant surrendering to the current. Behind me, the wolves waited. Not a single growl, not a single rushed movement, just presence, absolute, patient, undeniable. I turned slowly. The pack hadn't moved closer, but they hadn't loosened either. The arc remained intact, a living wall of fur and muscle framed by trees. The central wolf met my eyes again, and in that gaze there was no hunger. What stared back at me was calculation, an awareness so calm it felt ancient. This wasn't instinct alone, this was memory. I scanned the ground, the rocks, the ice, desperate for an option I hadn't already lost. That was when I saw it, near the riverbank, half buried beneath snow and frozen reeds. Fabric, dark, weather-worn, unmistakably human. A jacket sleeve, stiff with ice, caught between stones. I stepped closer, careful, heart pounding, and uncovered more with shaking hands. A backpack, torn open. One strap snapped clean through. The truth settled over me with crushing weight. Someone else had been here before me. Someone who had stood exactly where I was standing now, facing the same impossible choice. The wolves hadn't attacked them either. They had watched. They had waited. The river had finished what fear and exhaustion began. A sound escaped my throat, half breath, half disbelief. The wolves remained still, but the central one rose again, taking a single step forward. Not threatening, inviting. The message was horrifyingly clear now. This place wasn't accidental, it was familiar, a boundary, a lesson repeated. I backed away from the river, slowly, deliberately, refusing to look away from the pack. My heel struck rock instead of ice this time, solid ground anchoring me. The wolves adjusted, but not to block me. The arc loosened just slightly. Enough to test me. I took another step back. Nothing happened. A third step. The central wolf's ears flicked forward, alert, but it didn't advance. The others held position, eyes tracking every movement, every shift of weight. The forest seemed to lean in, holding its breath with me. Understanding came in fragments, sharp and sudden. They weren't guarding the river to trap me. They were guarding it to stop something worse. The broken ice, the narrow channel, the violence of the current. It wasn't a hunting ground. It was a grave. The wolves had learned this place the hard way, watching humans stumble into it, panic and disappear. And instead of attacking, instead of chasing, they had adapted. They had learned how to control without killing. I moved again, this time angling away from the river and toward higher ground, slow and steady, showing no fear, no sudden intent. The wolves shifted as a unit, not to block, but to guide. Their positions changed subtly, creating a corridor that led uphill, away from the roar of water and toward thicker forest. Step by step, the river's sound softened behind me. The climb was brutal. My legs screamed, lungs burned, vision blurred with effort and cold. Several times I nearly slipped, hands clawing at frozen roots to keep from falling. Each time I felt the wolves' presence behind me, not close enough to touch, but near enough to matter. They never rushed me, never forced speed. They waited when I needed to stop, resumed when I moved again. Eventually, the slope leveled. Trees opened into a familiar shape, a marked trail, half covered in snow but unmistakable. Human footprints, old but frequent. Civilization, however distant, lay in that direction. I staggered forward, barely aware of my own movement, until the ground beneath my boots felt less hostile, less eager to betray me. Only then did I stop. I turned back slowly, scanning the tree line. The wolves stood where the forest thickened, shadows reclaiming their forms. The central wolf held my gaze one last time. In the dim light, its eyes reflected nothing dramatic, no triumph, no warning. Just awareness. Then it turned away. One by one, the others followed, melting into the trees until the forest swallowed them whole. Silence returned, not empty this time, but complete. I didn't move for a long time after that. When I finally did, every step toward the trail felt unreal, like waking from a nightmare that refused to fade. Hours later, I reached a ranger station, collapsed inside, words tumbling out in broken fragments. They listened, they always do. But I could see it in their eyes. They had heard versions of this story before. Days later, I learned that the area near the river was known for disappearances. Not attacks, disappearances. People lost to water, cold, panic. Wolves sighted nearby. Wolves blamed, wolves feared. No one ever mentioned wolves saving anyone. I never went back to that forest. But sometimes at night, when everything is quiet enough, I think about that moment at the river's edge. About the jacket frozen into the stones, about the choice I almost made, and about the wolves standing behind me, not as executioners, but as witnesses. Because the most terrifying thing that night wasn't that the animal didn't attack. It was that it understood exactly what would happen if it did nothing.